Welcome to my channel. I am starting by the grace of my creator. How are you all?
Lesson, changing the angle of an object's lesson, position. This lesson describes how to use the rotate command to rotate objects in a drawing. You learn how to use the rotate command using the default options, and also learn how to use the reference and copy options while rotating objects. This lesson also describes how to rotate an object using grips. After you have created or inserted objects in the drawing, at times you must change the angle of those objects. You can do this easily with the rotate command, or by using grips to rotate the object. Objectives: after completing this lesson, you will be able to use grips or the rotate command to rotate objects in the drawing. Lesson, changing the angle of an object's position. 197. Rotating objects. You use the rotate command to rotate objects in the drawing. Command options enable you to rotate the objects simply by entering an angle for the rotation or by defining a reference angle and then entering a new angle for the reference angle. If you need to make a copy of the object while rotating, you can specify the copy option. When the copy option is selected, a copy of the object is rotated, leaving the original object in its current position. You can also use grips to rotate the object. In the following image, two chair objects are being rotated with the copy option. Command access: rotate command line, rotate, arrow ribbon, home tab, modify panel, rotate menu bar, modify rotate shortcut menu, select objects, then right click anywhere in the drawing window. Click rotate. 198. Chapter 3, manipulating objects. Options for the rotate command are accessible from the shortcut menu. Right click anywhere in the drawing area while the rotate command is active. Command specific options are always in the middle of the shortcut menu. Procedure: rotating objects. The following steps provide an overview of rotating objects using the rotate command. 1. On the ribbon, click home tab, modify panel, rotate. 2. Select the object, S, to rotate and press enter. 3. Specify a base point for the rotation. The object will rotate around this point. 4. Specify a rotation angle by moving the cursor or entering an angle. Lesson, changing the angle of an object's position. 199. Procedure, rotating objects using grips. The following steps give an overview of using grips to rotate objects. 1. Select an object to activate its grips. 2. Click a grip to activate grip edit mode. By default, this point will also be used as the center point of rotation. 3. Right click anywhere in the drawing. Click rotate. 4. Specify a rotation angle. Guidelines: rotate the original object or use the copy option to rotate a copy of the object. The base point for the rotation should be on or near the object being rotated. This is critical because the base point represents the point of rotation for the selected object. When appropriate, use polar tracking for accuracy and to speed up the process for defining the rotation angle. Use the reference option to refer to the angle of the object that you want to change. You can enter the angle of that object, or specify that angle by selecting 2 points to determine the angle vector, then entering the desired angle. 200. Chapter 3, manipulating objects. Practice exercise, rotate objects. In this practice exercise, you draw a rectangle and rotate it using grips, the rotate command, and the reference option. 1. Draw a rectangle of any size. 2. To use the grips to rotate the object, with the command line blank, select the object. Select one of the grips. Right-click the active grip. Click rotate. Drag the mouse around the rotation point, which is the grip that you selected. Click in the drawing window to rotate the rectangle. This is a random rotation angle. Press ESC to deactivate the grip selection. 3. Rotate the object again using the rotate command, this time. On the home tab, click modify panel, rotate. At the select object prompt, select the rectangle and press enter. At the prompt, specify the lower left corner as the base point. Enter a rotation angle of 10. Press enter. Notice that the object is rotated 10 degrees counterclockwise. Lesson, changing the angle of an object's position. 201. 4. Rotate using the reference option and orient the rectangle back to angle 0. On the home tab, click modify panel, rotate. Select the rectangle. Press enter. Specify the lower left corner as the base point. Right-click and click reference. 5. Specify the reference angle by selecting the following points on the angle of reference. Click the lower left corner endpoint, 1. Click the endpoint at 2. For the second point, any point along that line will work. To specify the new angle, enter 0, or press enter to accept the default 0. 6. The rectangle is now straight. Note the following: when using the reference option, clicking points on the line of reference using Object Snap is the most accurate method. The order in which you click the points on the line of reference determines what you enter for the new angle. For instance, if point 2 was selected before point 1, the new angle would have been 180. 202 Chapter 3, Manipulating Objects Exercise. Rotate objects. In this exercise, you use the rotate command to rotate objects in the drawing. You use the default rotate method for specifying a rotation angle, as well as the reference and copy options of the rotate command. When you have finished, you will be able to use the rotate command to rotate objects in other drawings. The completed exercise. Completing the exercise. To complete the exercise, follow the steps in this book or in the on-screen exercise. In the on-screen list of chapters and exercises, click Chapter 3, Manipulating Objects. Click Exercise, Rotate Objects. 1. Open C_rotate objects.dwg. 2. To rotate the computer, activate the rotate command. Select the computer object. Press Enter. Press Shift plus right-click anywhere in the drawing. Click Insert. Touch the computer block to display the Insert Object Snap marker, then select the point. Note, the Insert Object Snap override enables you to select the insertion point of the block. 3. To position the computer to face the chair, verify that the polar setting is selected. Drag clockwise until the polar snap display reads 315 degrees. The distance is not critical, just make sure that your cursor is not activating any object snaps. Click to select the point. Lesson: changing the angle of an object's position. 203. 4. To select the chair, on the Home tab, click Modify Panel Rotate. Click the chair object above the desk. Press Enter. Press Shift plus right-click anywhere in the drawing. Click Insert. Click the chair object to display the Insert Object Snap marker, then click to select the point. 5. To rotate the chair to face the desk, enter -90. Press Enter to rotate the chair 90 degrees counterclockwise. The chair should be positioned facing the desk. 6. To select the chair and base point, press Enter to repeat the rotate command. Select the chair object next to the small conference table. Press Enter. Select the center of the conference table as the base point. 7. To rotate the chair around the round table using the reference option, right-click anywhere in the drawing. Click Reference. Define the reference angle by selecting the center of the conference table and the midpoint of the chair backrest. Enter 90. Press Enter. The chair should be positioned 90 degrees up from the center of the conference table. 8. To make a copy of the chair while rotating it around the round table, on the command line, enter RO. Press Enter. Select the chair object. Press Enter. Click the center of the conference table as the base point. Right-click anywhere in the drawing. Click Copy. Position the cursor so that the polar angle displays 90 degrees. Click to select that point. A copy of the chair is rotated. 204 Chapter 3, Manipulating Objects. 9. To rotate both chairs with the copy option so that 4 chairs are around your table, press Enter to repeat the rotate command. Select both chair objects. Press Enter. Click the center of the conference table to specify the base point. Right-click anywhere in the drawing window. Click Copy. Position the cursor so that the polar angle displays 180 degrees. Click to select that point. 10. Close all files. Do not save. Lesson: creating a mirror image of existing objects. 205. Lesson: creating a mirror image of existing objects. This lesson describes how to create mirrored versions of existing objects in the drawing. You can use symmetrical copies of objects and spaces to aid you in your designs. Whether they are simple consumer products or whole apartment buildings where adjacent apartments use symmetric floor plans, all make use of symmetry for a variety of reasons. Objectives: after completing this lesson, you will be able to use grips or the mirror command to mirror objects in the drawing. 206 Chapter 3, Manipulating Objects. Mirroring objects. Using the mirror command, you can create symmetric versions of geometry. When you activate the mirror command, you are prompted to select the objects to mirror and to define a mirror line. The mirror line defines a vector across which all selected geometry is mirrored. After defining the mirror line, you can decide whether to erase or retain the source geometry. You can also control the mirror command using grips. Mirror works for all object types. Command access mirror command line, mirror, MI ribbon, home tab modify panel mirror menu bar, modify mirror mirroring text. You can use the mir text system variable to reverse text in a mirror action. By default, the mir text system variable is set to 0, which means the text is not reversed when mirrored. If you need the text to be reversed, set mir text to 1. Lesson: Creating a mirror image of existing objects. 207 Procedure: Mirroring objects. The following is an overview of mirroring objects in the drawing with the mir text system variable set to 0. 1. Activate the mirror command. 2. Select the objects to be mirrored. Press enter. 3. Select 2 points to define the mirror line. 4. Enter Y to erase source objects or N to keep the source objects. Notice that the orientation of the text remains the same. 208 Chapter 3, Manipulating Objects. Procedure: Mirroring text. The following is an overview of mirroring text in the drawing with the mir text system variable set to 1. 1. Begin by setting the mir text system variable to 1. This turns the mirroring of text on. At the command line, enter mir text, and press enter. Enter 1 and press enter. 2. Activate the mirror command. 3. Select the objects to be mirrored. Press enter. 4. Select 2 points to define the mirror line. 5. Enter Y to erase source objects or N to keep the source objects. Lesson: Creating a mirror image of existing objects. 209 Procedure: Mirroring objects using grips. The following steps give an overview of using grips to mirror objects. 1. Select an object to activate its grips. 2. Click a grip to activate grip edit mode. By default, this point will be used as the first point of the mirror line. 3. Right-click anywhere in the drawing. Click Mirror. 4. Move your cursor to define the mirror line. Click to select the point. Guidelines for mirroring objects. You can use the mirror command on all geometry. By default, all new drawings have the mir text system variable set to 0, so that text is not reversed in a mirror action. When mir text is set to 0, the text does not mirror. However, the text alignment is mirrored, for example from left alignment to right. Drawings that were created in older versions may have the mir text system variable set to 1. When you mirror a text object in one of these files, the text is reversed. To avoid reversal of the text, set the mir text value to 0. 210 Chapter 3, Manipulating Objects. Practice exercise: Mirror objects. In this practice exercise, you mirror an object using the mirror command in grips. First, you draw an object that you will mirror similar to the one shown. 1. Using the line command, draw an object similar to the one illustrated above. It is best to draw an object that is asymmetric to understand the mirror command. 2. To mirror the object you have just drawn, on the Home tab, click Modify Panel Mirror. Select the objects. Press enter. Click the first point of the mirror line. Click the second point of the mirror line. Note that with polar tracking on, you can mirror the object around a specific angle. Press enter to accept the default no and so that you do not erase the source object. 3. Zoom out, and mirror the objects using grips. With the command line blank, select the objects. Right-click one of the grips, 1. Click Mirror, 2. Right-click again. Click Copy, 3. Lesson: Creating a mirror image of existing objects. 211 4. Next, change the base point of the objects to mirror. Right-click the selected grip. Click Base Point. 5. Click the first and second points of the mirror line as indicated below. Notice that in this example polar tracking is on. 6. Press enter to complete the command and ESC to deselect the objects. 212 Chapter 3, Manipulating Objects. Exercise: Mirror objects. In the drawing in this exercise, you use the mirror command to copy similar geometry from one side of a drawing to another. You also identify and correct a potential problem when mirroring text. The completed exercise: completing the exercise. To complete the exercise, follow the steps in this book or in the on-screen exercise. In the on-screen list of chapters and exercises, click Chapter 3, Manipulating Objects. Click Exercise, Mirror Objects in the drawing. 1. Open m_mirror object.dwg. 2. To select the objects to mirror, on the Home tab, click Modify Panel Mirror. Enter WP. Press Enter. Create a window polygon around the objects as indicated below. Select points 1 through 4 in the blank area around the objects. Hint: to avoid object snaps, zoom in to select the points. When you have enclosed the object in the selection window, press Enter. Press Enter again to complete the object selection. 3. Select the endpoint of the circle center line as the first point of the mirror line. Lesson: Creating a mirror image of existing objects 213. 4. Drag the cursor upward. Click anywhere above the first point. Verify that polar tracking is on. Make sure that the cursor readout is 90 degrees. Right-click and click No to keep the source objects. 5. Close all files. Do not save. 214 Chapter 3, Manipulating Objects Lesson, Creating Object Patterns. This lesson describes what an array is and how you can use arrays to create duplicate objects, such as the circular array of chairs around the table in the following floor plan. Most common patterns contain geometry that is duplicated in a rectangular or circular array. You can use the array command to duplicate objects in a repeatable pattern. Objectives: After completing this lesson, you will be able to use the array command to pattern objects in the drawing. Lesson: Creating Object Patterns 215. Creating an array of objects using the array command. You can duplicate existing objects in a rectangle or circular, polar, pattern. You can select which type of array to use in the array dialog box. Click the rectangular or polar options to see point, distance, and method requirements for each type. The following illustration shows a rectangular and polar array. Command Access Array Command Line, Array, AR Ribbon, Home tab Modify Panel Array. Note: do not confuse this command with the 3D Array command. Menu Browser, Modify Array. 216 Chapter 3, Manipulating Objects Array dialog box, Rectangular Array. Click to select the object, S, to include in the array. Enter the number of rows, horizontal patterns, for the array. Enter the number of columns, vertical patterns, for the array. Enter a distance to offset each row. Use the simulated preview window to see the direction of the pattern. Enter a distance to offset each column. Enter an angle for the pattern. Click Preview to preview the array. Preview is not available until you select an object or objects for the array. Lesson: Creating Object Patterns 217. Array dialog box, Polar Array. Click to select the object, S, to include in the array. Enter the center point's coordinates in the X and Y fields or click the select point icon to select a center point in the drawing window. Select the method for calculating the polar array. Total number of items and angle to fill. Total number of items and angle between items. Angle to fill and angle between items. Enter the total number of items for the array. This includes the original object. Enter the total angle for the array. A negative number creates the array in a clockwise direction. Select to rotate each object as it is placed in the array. Zooming while using the array command. Although you cannot zoom or pan the drawing using traditional methods while the array dialog box or array preview is active, you can select the Pick Object button, or any of the other pick point buttons to temporarily hide the dialog box, allowing you to zoom and pan. To return to the array dialog box, press Enter without selecting any objects or points. 218 Chapter 3, Manipulating Objects Procedure, Creating a Rectangular Array of Objects. The following steps give an overview of creating rectangular arrays. 1. On the ribbon, click Home tab Modify Panel Array. 2. In the Array dialog box, click the rectangular option. Click Select Objects and select the objects to include in the array. 3. Enter row and column values, or click Pick Offset to define the row and column offset values. 4. If required, enter an angle for the array. 5. Click Preview to preview the array. 6. Right-click to accept and create the array, or press ESC to return to the dialog box. Lesson: Creating Object Patterns 219. Procedure: Creating a polar array of objects. The following steps are an overview of creating polar arrays. 1. On the ribbon, click Home tab Modify Panel Array. 2. In the Array dialog box, click the Polar option. Click Select Objects and select the objects to include in the array. 3. In the Center Point fields, enter the X and Y coordinates for the center point of the array, or click Pick Center Point to select the center point in the drawing. 4. In the Method list, select the method to use for the array. 5. Enter values in the appropriate fields according to the method that you chose. 6. Click Preview to preview the array. 7. Right-click to accept and create the array, or press ESC to return to the dialog box. 220 Chapter 3, Manipulating Objects. Guidelines for Rectangular versus Polar Array. Follow these guidelines when using the Array command. To create many regularly spaced objects, the Array command is faster than Copy command. For rectangular array, specify the number of rows and columns and the distance between each. For polar array, specify the number of copies of the object, the angle to fill, and whether the copies are rotated. Specify the center point about which the objects will array. A polar array is drawn counterclockwise or clockwise, depending on whether you enter a positive or a negative value for the angle to fill. Lesson: Creating Object Patterns 221 Practice Exercise. Creating an array of objects. In this practice exercise, you draw a 1x1 rectangle and create an array using the polar and rectangular array options. 1. Begin by drawing the rectangle. Start the rectangle command. Click the first corner in the drawing window. For the other corner, enter D for dimensions. Press enter. Enter a length of 1 and a width of 1. Click to position the rectangle. 2. To create a polar array, on the Home tab, click Modify Panel Array. In the Array dialog box, click Polar Array, 1. Click the Select Objects button, 2, and select the rectangle. Press enter to return to the dialog box. Click the Center Point button, 3, and, using Object Snap Tracking, track a center point that is 2 units down from the midpoint of the rectangle as shown. For total number of items, 4, enter 6. For angle to fill, 5, enter 360. Click OK, 6. Zoom to display your polar array, which should resemble the following illustration. 222 Chapter 3, Manipulating Objects 3. To create a rectangular array, create another 1x1 rectangle. On the Home tab, click Modify Panel Array. In the Array dialog box, click Rectangular Array, 1. Click the Select Objects button, 2, and click the rectangle. Press enter to return to the dialog box. Enter 12 for rows, 3, and columns, 4. Enter 2 for row offset, 5, and column offset, 6. Click OK, 7. Zoom to display your rectangular array, which should resemble the following illustration. Lesson: Creating Object Patterns 223 Exercise. Array objects in the drawing. In this exercise, you create polar and rectangular arrays of various pieces of office furniture in an office floor plan. When you have completed the exercise, you will be able to use the array command to create arrays of objects in your drawings. You have the option of completing this exercise using either imperial or metric units. Select one version of the exercise to complete the steps. The completed exercise. Completing the exercise. To complete the exercise, follow the steps in this book or in the on-screen exercise. In the on-screen list of chapters and exercises, click Chapter 3, Manipulating Objects. Click Exercise, Array Objects in the Drawing Metric. Exercise, Array Objects in the Drawing, Metric Units, 1. Open M_creating arrays.dwg. 2. To create a polar array, zoom into the area shown in the following image. 3. To create an array of the chair around the table, on the Home tab, click Modify Panel Array. In the Array dialog box, click Polar Array, 1. Click Select Objects, 2. Select the chair. Press enter to return to the dialog box. 224 Chapter 3, Manipulating Objects. Click the Center Point button, 3. With Object Snap-on, select the center of the table. For the total number of items, 4, enter 6. For the angle to fill, 5, enter 360. Click Preview, 6. Do not press enter. Press ESC to return to the dialog box. 4. Change the total number of items. In the Array dialog box, enter 8 for the total number of items, 4. Click OK to complete the polar array. 8 chairs are arrayed around the table as in the following illustration. 5. Zoom to display the area that is indicated in the following image. Make certain that the walls are visible. 6. Use the rectangular array option to populate the remaining offices with the objects from the first 2. On the Home tab, click Modify Panel Array. In the Array dialog box, click Rectangular Array. Click the Select Objects button. Select the objects indicated in the following image. Press Enter. Note: use 2 separate crossing windows to select the objects. 7. Set your desired number of rows and columns. In the Array dialog box, for rows, enter 4. For columns, enter 2. Under Offset Distance and Direction, click the button indicated below to pick both offsets. Lesson: Creating Object Patterns 225-8. Specify the unit cell as indicated. Click the end point of the line of the lower interior wall. For the other corner, click the endpoint of the line of the upper interior wall. Click Preview. Your rectangular array should appear as illustrated. Do not press Enter. Use the wheel on the mouse to adjust the display of your drawing. If necessary, press ESC to return to the dialog box and reselect the unit cell, or press Enter to complete the array command. 9. Close all files. Do not save. Exercise, array objects in the drawing, imperial units, 1. Open I_creating arrays.dwg. 2. To create a polar array, zoom into the area shown in the following image. 3. To create an array of the chair around the table, on the Home tab, click Modify Panel Array. In the Array dialog box, click Polar Array, 1. Click Select Objects, 2. Select the chair. Press Enter to return to the dialog box. 226 Chapter 3, Manipulating Objects. Click the Center Point button, 3. With Object Snap-on, select the center of the table. For the total number of items, 4, enter 6. For the angle to fill, 5, enter 360. Click Preview, 6. Do not press Enter. Press ESC to return to the dialog box. 4. Change the total number of items. In the Array dialog box, enter 8 for the total number of items, 4. Click OK to complete the polar array. 8 chairs are arrayed around the table as in the following illustration. 5. Zoom to display the area that is indicated in the following image. Make certain the walls are visible. 6. Use the rectangular array option to populate the remaining offices with the objects from the first 2. On the Home tab, click Modify Panel Array. In the Array dialog box, click Rectangular Array. Click the Select Objects button. Select the objects that are indicated in the following image. Press Enter. Note, use 2 separate crossing windows to select the objects. 7. Set your desired number of rows and columns. In the Array dialog box, for rows, enter 4. For columns, enter 2. Under Offset Distance and Direction, click Pick both offsets. Lesson, Creating Object Patterns. 227.8. Specify the unit cell as indicated. Click the endpoint of the line of the lower interior wall. For the other corner, click the endpoint of the line of the upper interior wall. Click Preview. Your rectangular array should appear as illustrated. Do not press Enter. Use the wheel on the mouse to adjust the display of your drawing. If necessary, press ESC to return to the dialog box and reselect the unit cell, or press Enter to complete the array command. 9. Close all files. Do not save. 228 Chapter 3, Manipulating Objects. Lesson, Changing an Object's Size. This lesson describes how to increase or decrease the size of objects in the drawing using the Scale command. When you create drawings, it is often quicker to modify existing geometry than to create new geometry from scratch. With the Scale command, you can resize geometry to meet the current design requirements. The object on the right was created by scaling the object on the left by 0.5. Objectives. After completing this lesson, you will be able to use the Scale command or grips to scale objects in the drawing. Lesson, Changing an Object's Size. 229 Scaling Objects. You use the Scale command when you need to change the size of existing geometry in the drawing. The Scale command can scale an entire drawing or just the objects that you select. After you select the geometry to be scaled, you have the option of scaling a copy of the selected geometry. If you choose this option, the original geometry remains unchanged while a copy of the geometry is scaled by the factor you specify. You can also control a scaling operation using grips. Command Access Scale Command Line, Scale, SC Ribbon, Home tab. Modify Panel Scale. Note, do not confuse this command with the 3D Scale command. Menu bar, Modify Scale shortcut menu, select objects then right-click anywhere in the drawing window. Click Scale. 230 Chapter 3, Manipulating Objects. Command Options. With the Scale command, you can scale geometry using the following options. Option Description. Base point. Use this option to define the point from which the selected geometry is scaled. If the base point is not coincident with the selected geometry, the distance between the base point and the geometry is scaled. Copy. Use this option to scale a copy of the selected geometry. The original geometry is not scaled. Reference. Use this option to specify a reference length, either by entering a value, or selecting 2 points. After you specify the reference length, enter a new length for the reference length. The scale factor is calculated as reference length equals new length. Procedure: scaling objects. The following steps give an overview of scaling objects using the scale command. 1. On the ribbon, click Home tab, modify panel scale. 2. Select the objects to be scaled. Press Enter to end the object selection. 3. Select a base point. 4. Enter a scale factor. Press Enter. Lesson: changing an object's size. 231 Procedure: scaling objects using grips. The following steps give an overview of using grips to scale objects. 1. Select an object to activate its grips. 2. Click a grip to activate grip edit mode. By default, this point will also be used as the base point for the scale. 3. Right-click anywhere in the drawing. Click Scale. 4. Specify a scale factor. Guidelines for scaling objects: a value less than 1 decreases the size of the geometry. A value greater than 1 increases the size of the geometry. For example, entering a scale factor of 0.5 halves the size of the selected objects. The most recent scale factor used persists for the current editing session. To scale using the reference option, use Object Snap to click 2 points on the object to define the reference scale. This is often quicker and more accurate than finding the distance and calculating a scale factor. When you use the reference option, the 2 points that define the reference distance are independent from the scale base point. 232 Chapter 3, Manipulating Objects Practice Exercise, Scaling Objects. In this practice exercise, you draw an object and scale it using the scale command with the reference option and grips with the copy option. You draw a rectangle of any size and scale it to a specific size. Then you scale and copy it using grips. 1. Draw a rectangle of any size. Start the rectangle command. Click the first corner. Click the opposite corner. 2. To scale the rectangle using the reference scale option, on the Home tab, click Modify Panel Scale. Select the rectangle. Press Enter. Click a base point on or near the rectangle. Right-click and click Reference. To specify the reference length, select the Object Snap endpoints as indicated below. Notice that the software calculates the exact length of the line based on the 2 endpoints that you select. To specify a new length, enter 2 and press Enter. 3. Use grips to scale and copy the rectangle at 0.5 scale and then at 0.25 scale of the original size. Select the middle of the rectangle for the base point. With the command line blank, select the rectangle. Right-click any grip on the rectangle. Click Scale. Using Object Snap Tracking, select the middle of the rectangle for the base point. Lesson: changing an object's size. 233 4. To specify the scale factors, enter 0.5. Press Enter. Enter 0.25. Press Enter. Press ESC to end the scale procedure. Press ESC to clear the rectangle selection. Your drawing should look similar to the illustration below. 234 Chapter 3, Manipulating Objects Exercise, Scale Objects using the Copy option. In this exercise, you use the Copy option of the Scale command to scale a copy of the link arm profile geometry and leave the source geometry unchanged. You then rotate the original geometry and dimensions. The completed exercise. Completing the exercise. To complete the exercise, follow the steps in this book or in the on-screen exercise. In the on-screen list of chapters and exercises, click Chapter 3, Manipulating Objects. Click Exercise, Scale Objects using the Copy option. 1. Open m_scale copy.dwg. 2. On the Home tab, click Modify Panel Scale. Window. Select all of the geometry and dimensions in the drawing. 3. Press Enter to accept the selection. 4. Select the center of the large circle as the base point. 5. Right-click anywhere in the drawing. Click Copy. 6. Enter 1.25 for the scale factor. Press Enter. 7. To rotate the original objects, begin the Rotate command. Enter P. Press Enter to select the previous selection set. 8. Press Enter to accept the selection set. Lesson: changing an object's size. 235 9. Select the center point of the larger circle. 10. Enter 90. Press Enter. 11. Close all files. Do not save. 236 Chapter 3, Manipulating Objects Challenge Exercise, Grips. In this exercise, you use grips to edit and manipulate objects in a drawing. When you have completed the exercise, you will be able to use grips to effectively manipulate geometry without having to use the standard editing commands. The completed exercise. Completing the exercise. To complete the exercise, Follow the steps in this book or in the on-screen exercise. In the on-screen list of chapters and exercises, click Chapter 3, Manipulating Objects. Click Challenge Exercise, Grip Edit Objects. 1. Open M_grips exercise.dwg. 2. To move a door into position using grips, select the door. Click the single grip to make it a selected grip. Right-click. Click Move. Drag the door into position. Click the end point of the wall. Your object will still be selected. Challenge Exercise, Grips 237-3. To copy the door using grips for the next room, click the grip again to make it a selected grip. Right-click. Click Move. Right-click. Click Copy. Note, with a single object, you do not need to click Move first and can proceed to copy. With more than one object selected, you always need to click Move before clicking Copy. Drag the door one room to the right. Click the end point of the wall. Press Enter to complete the copy. Press ESC to release your selection. 4. To move the plant into position using grips, select the plant. Click the grip to make it selected. Right-click. Click Move. Drag the plant to the upper left corner as shown below. 238 Chapter 3, Manipulating Objects 5. To copy the plant using grips, click the plant grip again to make it selected. Right-click. Click Move. Right-click. Click Copy. Drag and place the second plant in the lower right corner as shown. Press Enter to finish the copy. Press ESC to clear your selection. 6. To move the credenza and keyhole desk using grips, using the Move Grip mode, drag the credenza into position as shown. Using the Move Grip mode, drag the keyhole table into position as shown. Challenge Exercise, Grips 239-7. To move the file cabinet into position using grips, select the file cabinet. Click the grip to select it. Right-click. Click Move. Drag the object to the lower left corner as shown below. Place the object about 4 units above the lower wall attached to the left side wall. 8. To rotate the file cabinet using grips, click the grip again to select it. Right-click. Click Rotate. Enter 90. Press Enter. Press ESC to clear your selection set. 240 Chapter 3, Manipulating Objects 9. Use the Move and Rotate grip modes again to place the computer and phone onto the desk as shown. Refer to the previous step if needed for the step-by-step process. The computer object is rotated 45 degrees. The phone object is rotated 90 degrees. 10. Use Move, Rotate, and Copy grip modes to place the chair object in the office as shown. The desk chair is rotated -45 degrees and the conference table chair is rotated at 45 degrees. The remaining 2 chairs are rotated at 90 degrees. Your office layout should look like the following image. Challenge Exercise, Grips 241-11. Use the Copy and Base Point grip modes to copy many objects at once to populate the next office area to the right. Select all of the objects as shown in the following image. Pick any one of the available grips to make it hot. Right-click. Click Move. Right-click. Click Copy. Right-click. Click Base Point. Pick the inside top left corner of the room, 1, for the base point. Pick the top left inside corner of the next room, 2, for the move point. Press Enter to complete the copy. Press ESC to release your selection set. 242 Chapter 3, Manipulating Objects 12. Use the Mirror and Copy grip modes to populate the next office area to the right. Select all of the objects as shown in the following image. Click any one of the available grips to select it. Right-click. Click Mirror. Right-click. Click Copy. Right-click. Click Base Point. Pick the midpoint of the outside wall section, 1, between the doors for the base point. Drag your cursor up at 90 degrees and pick point, 2. Press Enter to complete the copy. Press ESC to release your selection set. 13. Continue to use grips, as time permits, to populate the remaining offices with furniture. 14. Close all files without saving. Challenge Exercise, Architectural 243 Challenge Exercise, Architectural. In this exercise, use what you learned about modifying objects to modify the floor plan. You have the option of completing this exercise using either imperial or metric units. Select one version of the exercise to complete the steps. The completed exercise. Completing the exercise. To complete the exercise, follow the steps in this book or in the on-screen exercise. In the on-screen list of chapters and exercises, click Chapter 3, Manipulating Objects. Click Challenge Exercise, Architectural Metric. 244 Chapter 3, Manipulating Objects. Metric Units 1. Open the drawing you saved from the previous challenge exercise, or open M_Arch Challenge CHP03.dwg. 2. Create geometry to represent the stairs for the building. You will create the stair in an open area of your building and then rotate it and move it into position. Begin with a single line. 1. Array the line to create the stairs on the left. Add the vertical lines on the left and the right. Mirror all the lines to create the stairs on the right. Create the remaining lines using AutoCAD and direct distance entry. Do not create the center line, it is there for dimensional purposes only. 3. Position the stairs in the lower stairwell as shown. Challenge Exercise, Architectural 245-4. Mirror the lower stairs to the top stairwell to complete the drawing. 5. Save and close the drawing. Imperial Units 1. Open the drawing you saved from the previous challenge exercise, or open I_Arch Challenge CHP03.dwg. 2. Create geometry to represent the stairs for the building. You will create the stair in an open area of your building and then rotate it and move it into position. Begin with a single line. 1. Array the line to create the stairs on the left. Add the vertical lines on the left and the right. Mirror all the lines to create the stairs on the right. Create the remaining lines using AutoCAD and direct distance entry. Do not create the center line, it is there for dimensional purposes only. 246 Chapter 3, Manipulating Objects 3. Position the stairs in the lower stairwell as shown. Challenge Exercise, Architectural 247-4. Mirror the lower stairs to the top stairwell to complete the drawing. 5. Save and close the drawing. 248 Chapter 3, Manipulating Objects Challenge Exercise, Mechanical. In this exercise, use what you learned about modifying objects to edit geometry. The completed exercise. Completing the exercise. To complete the exercise, follow the steps in this book or in the on-screen exercise. In the on-screen list of chapters and exercises, click Chapter 3, Manipulating Objects. Click Challenge Exercise, Mechanical. 1. Open the drawing you saved from the previous challenge exercise, or open M_Mech Challenge CHP03.dwg. 2. Rotate the right side view 90 degrees as shown. Note, the views in the image are closer together than they will appear in your drawing. Challenge Exercise, Mechanical 249-3. Move the top view so that its midpoint aligns with the circles in the main view. Move the side view so that it is correctly aligned with the base view. The views for the rack slider base should appear as shown. Note, the views in the image are closer together than they will appear in your drawing. 4. Copy or mirror the two circles in the top view to the other side. 5. Rotate the right side view and move both the top and side view into alignment with the base view. Note, the views in the image are closer together than they will appear in your drawing. 250 Chapter 3, Manipulating Objects 6. Mirror the geometry in the top and main views to complete the sketch as shown. 7. Save and close all files. Chapter Summary 251 Chapter Summary. Every design you create begins with simple geometry. The procedures you use to edit these basic objects transform them into complex designs. Having completed this chapter, you can use different selection methods to select objects in the drawing. Move objects in the drawing using object snaps, object tracking, and coordinate entry for precise placement. Use the copy command or use grips to create new objects from existing objects in the drawing. Change the angle of objects in the drawing by using the rotate command or with grips. Create mirrored images of objects in the drawing using the mirror command or with grips. Use the array command to create rectangular and circular patterns of objects in the drawing. Change the size of objects in the drawing. Use grips to edit objects and display geometric information. In this exercise, use what you learned about modifying objects to modify the floor plan. In this exercise, use what you learned about modifying objects to edit geometry. 252 Chapter 3, Manipulating Objects. Chapter Overview 253 Chapter 4 Drawing Organization and Inquiry commands the ability to electronically manipulate, organize, and obtain information in a drawing far surpasses anything that you could accomplish if you were to use manual methods. To achieve this, you must attain proficiency with entering commands and using the other design methods available. This way, you will see how the software is much more useful than pencil and paper. In this chapter, you learn how to organize objects in a drawing and how to use layers and line types to enhance your design practices. You also learn how to take advantage of the electronic design environment and use tools to obtain geometric information from objects in the drawing. Objectives. After completing this chapter, you will be able to, in this lesson you will use layers to organize objects in your drawing. Identify and change the properties of objects. In this lesson you adjust object properties on several different types of objects. You begin by learning about the Quick Properties panel, how to access it and how to control its visibility and behavior. You then use the Quick Properties panel to quickly change object properties. Use the Match Properties command to apply the properties from a source object to destination objects. Use the Properties palette to change object properties. Use line types to distinguish objects in the drawing. Use the inquiry commands, distance, radius, angle, area, list, and ID, to obtain geometric information from the drawing. In this exercise, you use what you learned about drawing organization and inquiry commands to create layers, manipulate objects and their layers, and create additional geometry on its correct layer. 254 Chapter 4, Drawing Organization and Inquiry Commands. In this exercise, you use what you learned about drawing organization and inquiry commands to add layers and hidden geometry to the drawing views. Standard object snap and status bar settings. Before completing the exercises in this chapter, refer to the Settings for the Exercises section in the introduction in Volume 1. Lesson, Using Layers. 255 Lesson, Using Layers. This lesson describes what layers are and how you can use them to organize objects in your drawing. For example, in the following illustration, objects might be placed on different layers, with dimensions on one layer, hidden lines on another, and the whole features isolated on a third. Each layer may have property settings that determine the color, line type, and line weight of the objects on that layer. In a typical drawing, objects are placed to represent some part of the design. These objects can include geometry, text, dimensions, and borders. To organize your drawing, you need a way to logically group objects based on function, appearance, or other commonalities. There are many industry layering standards and most designers base their own standards on one of these. Most important is that you establish a standard for layering and you follow it. After completing this lesson, you will be able to use layers to organize objects in your drawing. Objectives. After completing this lesson, you will be able to describe how layers can be used to organize objects in your drawing. Describe the purpose of Layer 0. Access the Layer Properties Manager and use other commands to manage layers. 256 Chapter 4, Drawing Organization and Inquiry Commands. Organizing objects with layers. As your drawings increase in complexity, organization of the drawing objects becomes critical to efficiently managing the design data. You can use layers to logically group objects in the drawing. In the following office layout, you would use layers to separate walls, partition walls, furniture, text, and equipment. About layers. Use layers to logically organize the objects in the drawing and to enforce line type, color, and line weight standards. When you group objects into layers, you can then control these objects by controlling the single layer. For example, if you put all the dimensions on a single layer, you could choose to hide these dimensions simply by freezing that layer. The following image illustrates how layers are used to organize objects. The image on the left represents the logical grouping of similar objects, while the image on the right illustrates what you see in the software. Lesson, Using Layers. 257 Using layers is similar to using overlays in a manual drafting environment where clear media that contains groups of related design elements are placed throughout the overall design. As a result, you see everything that you create. You have the flexibility to easily remove the overlays, and can focus on any aspect of your design. A typical layer configuration. A typical drawing could use layers to organize objects in the following way. Layer name. Objects. Walls. All geometry representing walls. Electrical. All geometry representing electrical. Hidden geometry that is represented by hidden lines. Landscape. Geometry representing landscaping objects. Construction. Temporary geometry used for sketching or other construction geometry purposes. Dimensions. Drawing dimensions. Annotation. Text and notes. Hatch patterns, fills, gradients. Title block. Borders, title block, and title block information. The preceding table is only an example of a typical layer configuration. Most companies have layer standards already defined to suit their particular needs. The following example shows a standard architectural layer configuration. 258 Chapter 4, Drawing Organization and Inquiry Commands. Typical architectural layer configuration. Use the Layer Properties Manager to create and manage the layers in a drawing. Layer key points. Use layers to organize objects in your drawing. Layers have property settings that determine the color, line type, and line weight of the objects on that layer. Use the Layer Properties Manager dialog box to create and manage layers. Every drawing contains at least the default layer 0. To organize a drawing, consider grouping objects onto layers based on function, appearance, or other commonalities. There are many industry standards concerning layering from which you can establish a layering standard for your drawings. When your drawing is organized with layers, you can easily control entire groups of objects. Default layer. Every drawing that you create has a default layer called 0, 0. This ensures that every drawing contains at least one layer. Default layer defined. When you create a new drawing, a number of layers may be present depending on the template that you used. Layer 0, however, is persistent regardless of the template used. Every drawing will contain the default layer 0. Layer 0 cannot be renamed or deleted. AutoCAD registered uses that layer to establish predictable behaviors for objects such as blocks, regardless of how other layers are named. Lesson: Using layers. 259. The following illustration shows the Layer Properties Manager dialog box in a drawing created from Academy DWT. The only layer present is 0. Guidelines for layer 0. The following are some specific guidelines related to layer 0. You can create layers in addition to layer 0 in the Layers Properties Manager when you begin a new drawing unless they are already provided in your company's drawing template. You can make a layer current first and then draw your objects. This automatically places the geometry on that current layer instead of layer 0. Consider layer 0 as your working layer when uncertain where to place geometry. Then, move the objects to the appropriate layer. You should create simple block geometry on layer 0 so that when you insert it on another layer it takes on the properties of that layer. For example, a chair block created on layer 0 and inserted on the furniture layer will appear with the properties, color, line type, line weight, that are assigned to the furniture layer. You should insert blocks with multiple layers on layer 0 so that the layers and colors assigned to the block appear the way they were created when you insert them into your drawing. If you do create objects on layer 0, you can assign them to a different layer at any time. Layer tools. When you create and manage layers, you use the Layer Properties Manager and the Layer Control list on the ribbon. Together, these commands and tools provide you with the functionality required to effectively create, manage, and assign objects to layers. 260 Chapter 4, Drawing Organization and Inquiry Commands. Layers Panel. Command access. Use the Layer Properties Manager to create layers and control the color, line type, line weight, and other properties of each layer. Layer Properties Manager. Command line, layer, LA ribbon, Home tab. Layers Panel. Layer Properties menu bar, Format layer. To quickly make an object's layer current, use the following command. Make objects layer current. Command line, LameCur ribbon, Home tab. Layers Panel. Make objects layer current. Menu bar, Format layer. Tools. Make objects layer current. Lesson: Using layers. 261. To return to the previous layer settings, use the following command. Layer previous. Command line, layer ribbon, Home tab. Layers Panel. Previous menu bar, Format layer. Tools. Layer previous. Layer previous in AutoCAD. Layer previous is not available in AutoCAD registered. Layer Properties Manager dialog box. Your primary tool for managing layers is the Layer Properties Manager. Use this dialog box to create and manage layers. 262 Chapter 4, Drawing Organization and Inquiry Commands. Command options. The following options are available in the Layer Properties Manager dialog box for essential layer management. Option description. Click to create a new layer. Enter a name for the layer in the field. Select the layer name twice to rename. Layer names can be listed in the name column in ascending or descending order. Click to delete the selected layer. You cannot delete the current layer or layers containing objects. You can undo by selecting the undo icon from the quick access toolbar. Click to make the selected layer current. You can also double-click the layer to make it the current layer. Click the layer row and the appropriate column to assign or change the properties for that layer. Properties include color, see below, line type, see below, line weight, see below, and whether the layer will plot or not. Color, select a color from the AutoCAD color index. Note that the color white will print black and be displayed black on a white drawing background and white on a black background. Lesson, using layers 263 option description line type. A blank drawing will contain the continuous line type. Select the load button to load other line types. Line weight. Various line weights will not be displayed in the drawing window unless the show line weight option is selected in the status bar. Note that the default line weight is 0.01 inches or 0.25 millimeters. New layer properties. When you create a new layer, the properties of the currently selected layer are duplicated for the new layer. If your new layer is going to have properties such as color or line type in common with another layer, select the similar layer before you click New. Layer status. The visibility and availability of objects on specific layers are determined by the layer's status. The following table describes the potential status of a layer. These icons appear in the Layer Properties Manager and the Layer List. Click the icon to change the status of the layer. Icon status or on. Objects on the layer are visible. Off. Objects on the layer are not visible but are still considered when the drawing is regenerated. 264 Chapter 4. Drawing Organization and Inquiry Commands. Icon status or thought. Objects on the layer are visible. Frozen. Objects on the layer are not visible and are not considered when the drawing is regenerated. Or new VP Freeze. Freezes layer in newly created viewports. VP Freeze. Layout only. The layer is not visible and will not print in the selected or current viewport if frozen. Or unlocked. You can select and edit objects on the layer. Locked. You cannot select or edit objects on the layer. Layer Control List. The Layer Control List is located on the Layers panel. Select the down arrow to reveal the list of layers in the drawing. The layer control serves a dual purpose. Lesson, using layers 265-1. In normal operations, the current layer is displayed. However, when an object is selected with the command line blank, the list displays the layer that the object is on. The following image shows that when the door block is selected, the A doors layer is displayed. It is helpful to know what layer the object is on. But you may also place the selected object or objects on another layer by choosing the layer from the drop-down list. 2. After you create layers, you can use the layer control to select a layer to make it current, to change the layer status to freeze or thaw, lock or unlock, or turn layer on or off. 266 Chapter 4. Drawing Organization and Inquiry Commands. Layer Tools. Key points. Creating and managing layers requires the use of some key commands, the Layer Properties Manager, and the Layer Control List on the Layers panel. Your primary tool for managing layers is the Layer Properties Manager. Use this dialog box to create and manage layers. Once a layer is created, you cannot delete it if it is current or if there are objects referenced on that layer. Layer 0 cannot be deleted or renamed. Layer properties include color, line type, line weight, and whether the layer will plot or not. A layer status can be on or off, frozen or thawed, and locked or unlocked. Layers that are turned off are not visible but are still considered when the drawing is regenerated. Layers that are frozen are not visible and are not considered when the drawing is regenerated. With the command line blank, you can select an object and see what layer it is on from the Layers Control List located on the Layers panel. You can select an object and move it to another layer using the Layers Control List. You can change a layer's status from the Layers Control List. The Layer Previous command returns you to the previous layer state, to the previous layer setting, and to the previous status of all layers in the drawing. Performance tip: for better performance on large drawings, freeze layers instead of turning them off. Objects on layers that are turned off are still considered when the drawing is regenerated, while objects on layers that are frozen are not considered, and thus not calculated when the drawing is regenerated. Lesson, using layers 267. Practice exercise, layer tools. In this practice exercise, you create layers in the Properties Manager dialog box and select the layer from the Layer Control List to draw objects on the appropriate layer. 1. To create the layers, on the ribbon, click Home tab, Layers panel, Layer Properties. In the dialog box, click New. Create the following layers: layer name, circle, color, red layer name, line, color, blue layer name, rectangle, color, green. Note: if you enter the layer name and then a comma, a new layer name field appears. The layers are automatically listed in alphabetical order. 2. Close the Layer Properties Manager dialog box. 3. In the Layer Control List, select the circle layer to make it current and draw circles on that layer. 4. Repeat the previous step. Click the rectangle layer to make it current and draw rectangles. Click the line layer to make it current and draw lines. 268 Chapter 4, Drawing Organization and Inquiry Commands Exercise. Work with layers. In this exercise, you freeze and thaw layers and lock and unlock them. You create new layers, set the current layer, and create new geometry on the current layer. The completed exercise. Completing the exercise. To complete the exercise, follow the steps in this book or in the on-screen exercise. In the on-screen list of chapters and exercises, click Chapter 4, Drawing Organization and Inquiry Commands. Click Exercise, Work with Layers. 1. Open m_create layers.dwg. 2. Study the drawing, paying particular attention to the color and line type of the objects. Turn the dimensions layer off to make it easier to view and make changes to the geometry in the drawing. On the Home tab, click Layers panel Layer Control List. Click the sun icon to freeze the dimensions layer. The icon changes from a sun to a snowflake, indicating that the layer is frozen. 3. To make the hidden layer current, on the Home tab, click Layers panel Layer Control List. Select Hidden to set it as the current layer. 4. Zoom into the area shown and draw lines on the hidden layer. Using the line command, create a line from point 1 to point 2 and another from point 3 to point 4 as shown in the following illustration. Make sure you are snapping to the exact endpoint or intersection on the existing objects. Lesson, using layers. 269.5. Draw a line on the center layer across the center of the object as indicated below. Zoom out so that the entire drawing is displayed, then zoom into the area shown below. On the Home tab, click Layers panel Layer Control List. Select the center layer. Start the line command. Acquire the 180-degree quadrant point of the large circle and drag your cursor to the left along the extension path. In the dynamic input field, enter 5. Press Enter. Drag your cursor outside the large circle to the right along the extension path. In the dynamic input field, enter 85. Press Enter. Press Enter again to end the line command. 6. To create another line across the center of the object, press Enter to repeat the line command. Acquire the 270-degree quadrant point of the large circle and drag your cursor downward along the extension path. In the dynamic input field, enter 5. Press Enter. Drag your cursor outside and above the large circle along the extension path. In the dynamic input field, enter 85. Press Enter. Press Enter again to end the line command. 270 Chapter 4, Drawing Organization and Inquiry Commands. 7. Use the Rotate command to rotate both center lines 30 degrees. Use the center of the large circle as the base point for the rotation. 8. Thaw the dimension layer. On the Home tab, click Layers panel Layer Control List. Click the snowflake icon to thaw the dimensions layer. Zoom out to the extents of your drawing. 9. To observe object properties in the Layer Control List, with the command line blank, click any dimension. Notice that the dimensions layer appears in the Layer Control List. Press ESC so that the command line is blank. Move your cursor over any object on the visible layer as shown below. Notice the padlock symbol that is displayed. Objects on the visible layer are locked and cannot be modified. However, you may add more geometry to any locked layer. Lesson, using layers. 271. Select an object on the visible layer and notice how the layer name displays in the Layer Control List. Select any other object, such as a dimension, and notice that now the Layer Control field is blank. Because the list cannot display multiple properties at once, this indicates the objects that you selected are on different layers. Press ESC to deselect all objects. 10. Try to move some of the objects including ones which are on a locked layer. Start the Move command. Select all of the objects in the auxiliary view. Press Enter. Click any point on the drawing. Enter 25. Press Tab. In the Angle field, enter 30. Press Tab. Click anywhere in the drawing to complete the Move command. Notice that some of the objects did not move. Undo the Move command. 11. This time you will move the objects again, but first you unlock the layer that some of these objects are on. On the Home tab, click Layers panel Layer Control List. Click the padlock icon on the visible layer. Note that the padlock changes from a closed lock to an open lock, indicating that the layer is unlocked. Repeat the Move command from the previous step. Notice how all of the objects are moved. Relock the visible layer. 12. To create a new layer, on the Home tab, click Layers panel Layer Properties. In the Layer Name field, click Visible. The properties of Layer Visible are used as the default properties for the new layer. In the Layer Properties Manager dialog box, click New Layer, 1. In the Layer Name field, 2, enter Title block. Click the Color field, 3, and select White. 13 To add another layer, click New Layer again. In the Layer Name field, enter Viewport. Click the Color field and select Cyan. Click OK. Click in the Plot field. This sets the viewport layer to non-plotting. Click the Layer Title block. Right-click. Click Set Current. Click the X to close the Layer Properties Manager dialog box. 14 Zoom out to the extents of your drawing. 272 Chapter 4, Drawing Organization and Inquiry Commands 15. To create a rectangular border, start the Rectangle command. Enter 0, 0. Press Enter. Right-click. Click Dimensions. Enter 400 for the length. Press Enter. Enter 277 for the width. Press Enter. Click anywhere near the auxiliary view to complete the command. 16 Close all files. Do not save.
If any need, contact me by Gmail md.assad7157@gmail.com. Thanks for watching. Subscribe my channel and press the bell icon to get next video.